Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special Cheeky Scientist panel interview. So we're here talking about top careers for PhDs right now, and these are our personal career picks. We've talked about quite a few before we started the video, and we've identified each of us two careers that we're really seeing surge right now for PhDs. We're seeing a lot of activity in terms of employer demand, despite the overall economy being down, and a lot of PhDs in our programs are transitioning into them, and we want you to stay up to date with these specific career tracks and job titles. So we'll start with you, Alejandra. I know there's two that are kind of connected that you're seeing really thrive right now. Can you tell us a little bit about them and what the titles are?
Sure. Well, the first one is medical writing and all of this big umbrella of medical communication. And the other one I've seen thriving right now is MSL, so medical science liaison. And I think one thing that is important to notice about these programs is that they are very connected to like advancing treatments and new like medications, new products in the pharma industry. And these are things that aren't stopping. Like we all still care a lot about our health. So all of these positions that, because medical writers, they have to, like companies still have to present the advances of a trial, for example, that's legally binding. So that's not stopping. And medical writers are the ones that do all of these materials to present. And then MSLs are the ones who, once that therapy is available, they go and talk to doctors and just make this awareness. And those are two things that are never going to stop. They are like recession proof. And we are seeing like a surge on this, like PhD getting hired in these positions.
Yeah, both of those are recession proof, and very often they're both under the medical affairs overall umbrella or department. Medical science liaisons, what's been really fascinating to see is the uptick in hiring despite them not traveling. It's more of a traveling position. Medical science liaison, they deal with the key opinion leaders, the clinicians, et cetera, in terms of supporting a pharmaceutical company. They're able to have the off-label conversations. In the biotech industry, there's a similar role called application scientist, which is just worth mentioning. And then medical writing, of course, is one of those roles you can do remotely. And if you haven't realized it yet, we're in kind of a credibility war or a information war of what's right and what's wrong. We're seeing on the world stage what happens when people can't understand data or information or what's actually credible, if they don't know how to read models, if they don't understand simple things that we learn as a PhD, garbage in, garbage out, in terms of the quality of the model or the assessment or the government regulation or the business regulation can only be as good as the data into it. So great career paths to mention. Thank you, Alejandra. Elliot, same question to you. What were the two career paths, your two career or job title picks?
Yeah, you actually great segue into one of them. More thinking sort of the being seen a lot of like for information sort of software specialists, and this is basically someone who is handling all of that data that is coming in. Especially now within a lot of different companies, they're trying to shift things around and trying to figure out how to handle this data. Seeing lots more within pharma, things are coming in that way, but not just there. You're also seeing it with like a bunch of different online companies and logistics, and they're all trying to figure out like they're getting so much data and trying to figure out how do we manage all of this stuff that we're getting, and then so that we actually can disseminate like useful information to basically try and streamline processes, make sure that things are making it from point A to point B, and in a timely manner, and how they're saying they should. And so there's people who are actually having to handle all of this data and make sure it's disseminated. So these are people who are doing sort of that information and software specialists. And then we also have people like in technical development who are doing can be another slightly umbrella of jobs where they're basically someone who's going over and making sure that the product and the items are actually being developed in a way that can be used. So as we're having to switch things around from being in-house to being online, you've got people who are going over like, how do we make this happen? We're not longer having a storefront, but we want people to be able to actually enjoy what they're doing, and this sort of make sure the product is useful still, and without having a lot of the hands-on things. So you're developing the technology so that it can be, especially now as we're seeing is, you know, Alejandro mentioned surge in, you know, the pharma industries and doing that, like, we need to make sure that, you know, these drugs, these compounds, these, you know, treatments are actually able to be used by people. And so there's a back end section of that development portion of, like, they're not just researching the, you know, the compounds or the drugs, they need to be able to make some sort of deliverable method with it. And these jobs are becoming more and more so as we're increasing the number of, you know, items and products and, you know, treatments that are coming out there. And so I'm working on those.
And I agree. And I don't think it's just with pharma or biotech or tech, but just companies in general. They're going to need more people in technical development, more people who can process information, informatics, even if it's just data that has to do with their own internal operations, their own supply chains. This doesn't have to be pharmaceuticals or the biotech industry. It could be the hospitality industry, right? It could be retail, which is going to need to look at data and adapt very, very quickly. So what I think we see in common here is a lot of information and data needs to be collected, and not just collected, that seems to be easier and easier now, but you need to be able to clean that data, you need to be able to wrangle that data or information, and you need to be able to draw conclusions from it that are going to help businesses move forward. You have the skill set, especially the research skill set, the analysis skill set, no matter what your PhD background is. So Lisa, your 2 top career choice picks.
Oh, good grief. Well, there's already a lot of suggestions or insights from both Alejandra and Elliot. So in kind of connection to those 2, I would also, or those 4, I should say, I would also add in, so we kind of already touched on it a bit, but data scientists, and data scientist does encompass a lot of different possible career paths, a lot of different responsibilities involved in the position and all that kind of, there's a lot involved. But companies, all companies, like no matter what company, if it's a biotech, pharma, like the department stores that you go get your food from, or the hardware stores, I mean, all of those companies, they all have information that needs to be organized, analyzed. Something needs to be done with it, right? So that's where the data scientists come into play. And the other one that I would say is also like virtual project managers, because, and I think a common theme among all of these positions is that all of them can be done remotely, right? So they're usually, a lot of them are usually done in-house, so they can shift between in-house or virtual positions. But as a project manager, you're working to like organize a bunch of different information, a bunch of different people, make sure things get done, make sure that the tasks of the company are on point. To make sure that the goals are achieved and that the company can still move forward and succeed and do what it needs to do. So yeah, so I would say that there's a lot of possibilities. So there's you probably for those of you watching probably notice that there's a lot of overlap potentially between a lot of these different positions.
Yeah. No, thank you, Lisa. And I think the overlap is those transferable skills that all of you have that span any of these very popular positions right now in industry, these high demand positions in industry. So there's a lot of contraction in industry, of course. There's more job candidates than there are jobs, but you're protected from this in a sense because of those 2 key transferable skills, research and analysis, which means you can collect information and or data. So it doesn't matter if you're STEM or non-STEM, you can do that. That's why we say information and or data. You can also analyze it. Now, Lisa brought up data scientist. This is a very popular, very competitive, high-paying position. And the difference is not how well you can analyze the data, not how good you are at stats, not if you can figure out how to do Python or SQL. As a PhD, you can learn this. I mean, you probably have worked in R, maybe MATLAB, et cetera, if you do have a STEM background. But the differentiator is your ability to communicate with stakeholders and to take whatever technical data has been generated and translate it into business data or something that's going to improve business data, business metrics like profits, productivity, revenues, COGS, and so forth. Product management, even more important now with virtual things happening, a lot more coordination, a lot more online record keeping needs to occur. Getting into a senior project management position, it's a great position because you get to work with a lot of executives. You have a lot of authority enforcement as a project manager. You're coordinating, you're communicating, you're telling upper management no often because you're the one responsible for setting the milestones and setting the budgets, timelines, and so forth. The last two I wanted to add, my two picks are number one, user experience researcher, sometimes called user experience analyst, which drives home the point I just said, research and analysis, right? Any job that ends with either of those two, you can get hired into. I love this position because we're seeing PhDs, both STEM and non-STEM, get hired into this role at not just biotechs and pharma companies and tech companies, but also the hospitality industry. We've had a PhD get hired at Hilton, for example, and retail. We've had another get hired at Home Depot, as well as others. All companies now, they're gonna have an online component, especially after the pandemic. So they're rushing to hire these user experience analysts, which is kind of like just a buzz job title. It's what data scientist was, I would say, 10 years ago. User experience researcher, because online software has taken over everything. So that word user, that's the buzzword. It could be the same thing as 20 years ago what I guess a consumer analyst is, or even a quantitative analyst, just positioned slightly differently. You're basically a data scientist that's working to help the employer manage their client's user experience, both offline in a store, like how they are able to see the company's products within a store, what their experience is in a hotel, what their experience is with a certain drug or technology, and then online too. What's their experience in being able to order it? If you've ever ordered something online on your phone that was difficult, you probably never wanted to go back to that company and order from them again. That's why it's so important. Number two, management consulting. This is one of the premier jobs for PhDs, and they're hiring more and more PhDs into this role because of your ability to do one thing. This is another transferable skill you have, synthesis. So you can take all of this information, you can synthesize it and make business decisions. This is very, very important for you to understand. As a management consultant, it's a role that's very competitive, similar to MSLs, similar to data science, but a lot of PhDs get into it. And if you're willing to dive in and understand the business side of industry, things that all of our programs at Cheeky Scientists will teach you on, you can get into that role. And it's one that's certainly thriving now because a lot of businesses are struggling. They need to pivot quickly. And some of them are so big that they can't pivot without bringing in a McKinsey & Company, without bringing in a Bain or a boutique firm to help them. So thank you all. Thank you all for watching. Alejandra and Elliot, Lisa, thank you for your contributions. Hopefully this helps. We'll do a recap in the text message above this video. Go to phdsgethired.com to get on our Cheeky Scientist Association waitlist and be the first to know when we have free online webinars about these different job titles, including one that we have coming up next Thursday. What is that? June 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks all.